The rope creaked in the morning wind. September 1946. Marcus Garvey Park. 6:23 a.m. An elderly woman walking her dog saw a shape hanging from the old oak tree near the park's north entrance. At first, she thought it was laundry blown into the branches. Then she saw the Columbia University sweatshirt and started screaming. Detective Robert Walsh arrived at 6:47 a.m., but what he saw made his breath catch. This wasn't just a crime, it was a message pinned to a teenager's chest: colors know your place. The victim was only 19, a boy with soft hands and a bright future, now hanging 3 feet off the ground. Walsh looked around the quiet park, knowing this tree was visible from 3 different streets. The KKK wanted Harlem to see. They wanted Harlem to tremble. But they made one fatal mistake: they didn't check the boy's lineage. He was the nephew of Elias Thorne, and before the sun set on the 7th day, the men who tied that knot would wish they had never stepped foot in New York. The rope creaked in the morning wind, a rhythmic, haunting sound that broke the silence of the dawn. September 1946. Marcus Garvey Park. 6:23 a.m. An elderly woman walking her dog saw a shape swaying from the old oak tree near the park's north entrance. At first, she thought it was laundry blown into the branches. Then she saw the Columbia University sweatshirt and the lifeless eyes of a boy with a future. She started screaming, a sound that would echo through Harlem for the next 7 days. NYPD arrived at 6:47 a.m., but Detective Robert Walsh knew immediately that this wasn't just a homicide. It was a declaration of war. Pinned to the boy's chest was a crude note: colors know your place. The victim was only 19, a scholar, and the favorite nephew of Elias, the ghost, Thorne. The KKK wanted Harlem to tremble, but they had made a mathematical error that would cost them everything. They didn't realize they had just lynched the kin of the ghost, a man who viewed blood as a debt and silence as a weapon. If this opening gripped you, smash that subscribe button now. We're just getting started with the week that changed Harlem forever. Detective Robert Walsh walked into the 28th precinct and felt the temperature drop. The air was thick with a silence that tasted like betrayal. He laid the colors know your place note on his captain's desk, expecting an immediate mobilization of the city's finest. Instead, Captain Miller didn't even look up from his coffee. File it as a gang dispute, Walsh. Don't go looking for ghosts, Miller said, his voice cold as the stone walls. Walsh looked around the room and saw the avoidant eyes of his fellow officers. He realized then that the KKK hadn't just visited Harlem, they were already inside the building, wearing badges and drinking the same coffee. The investigation was dead before it began. But while the police were looking away, Elias Thorne was looking directly into the heart of the conspiracy. The ghost didn't need a badge to find the truth. He had the streets, and the streets were already talking. The system had failed, but Thorne's justice was just beginning its cold, calculated descent into the shadows of the precinct. Do you think the police were involved? Drop your theories in the comments below. Like this video if you want more hidden history. The victim, David Thorne, was supposed to be the family's ticket out of the underworld. A brilliant student at Columbia University, he spent his nights studying law and his days dreaming of a Harlem where justice wasn't a commodity bought and sold in back alleys. He was the only innocent thing left in Elias Thorne's life, a bright light in a world of darkness. To see him hanging like a piece of meat was a violation of the only law Thorne truly respected, the protection of the future. The KKK cell, led by a shadowy figure known as the Grand Dragon, had been infiltrating northern cities, using public lynching as a psychological weapon to reclaim territory they felt was being lost. They chose David because he represented the uppity progress they feared most. They thought his death would be a period at the end of Harlem's rise. They didn't understand that for Elias Thorne, blood isn't just liquid, it's a ledger entry that must be balanced. The ghost sat in his study, staring at David's honors cord, his face a mask of stone. Share this video to spread the word about the stories history books won't tell you. Elias Thorne didn't go to the funeral first. He went to a basement in East Harlem where the sun never reached. He found a low-level lookout named Slippery Pete, a man who survived by knowing secrets he shouldn't and selling them to the highest bidder. Thorne didn't use a gun. He used a heavy wooden chair and the crushing weight of his silence. For 2 hours, the only sound in the room was Pete's shallow, terrified breathing. Finally, the man broke under the pressure of the ghost's stare. He revealed that the lynching wasn't an isolated act of hate. It was a coordinated provocation designed to spark a race war that would justify a massive police crackdown. Pete gave up the name of the first man on the rope, a local butcher named Clarence who moonlighted in white robes and carried a hatred deeper than his knife cuts. Thorne listened, his eyes cold and unblinking. He didn't kill Pete, he let him live to spread a message through the underworld. The ghost is awake, and he's counting to 7. The hunt had officially begun. Make sure to hit that notification bell so you don't miss day 3. Clarence the butcher thought he was safe behind his storefront, surrounded by the tools of his trade. He was wrong. On Wednesday morning, the residents of Harlem woke up to a sight that made even the toughest gangsters pause in their tracks. In the same park, on the same oak tree where David had hung, Clarence was found. He wasn't dead, but he was unrecognizable. He was tied in a complex series of knots used by longshoremen, his mouth sewn shut with surgical wire to ensure he could never speak the slurs he loved again. Pinned to his blood-stained apron was a new note, written in Thorne's elegant, precise handwriting: "Justice is a mirror." The message was received with terrifying clarity. The KKK cell realized they weren't dealing with a grieving uncle, they were dealing with a master of psychological warfare. The police arrived, but when they saw the victim, they didn't make an arrest. They recognized Thorne's signature, and for the first time, the invisible empire felt the cold hand of fear. Is this justice or revenge? Tell us what you think in the comments. Like the video for the algorithm. Thorne's investigation soon led him to a terrifying realization that confirmed his darkest suspicions. 2 of the men holding the rope that night were wearing blue uniforms and carrying city-issued sidearms. Officer Holloway and Officer Briggs weren't just looking away, they were active participants in the lynch mob. They used their patrol cars to clear the streets for the KKK, ensuring David had no one to call for help and no escape route. Thorne tracked them to a back alley bar where they felt protected by their badges and their brothers in arms. He didn't ambush them in the street. He waited until they were alone, stripped of their authority in the dark. The ghost moved through the shadows of the alley like a predator. He didn't want a quick death for them, he wanted them to feel the same helplessness David felt as the air left his lungs. He disabled their radio and let them look into his eyes, the eyes of a man who had already decided their fate. The badge couldn't protect them from the ghost's mathematics. Subscribe for more stories about the moments when the community had to protect its own. By Friday, the KKK cell was in a state of total, frantic panic. Their Grand Dragon ordered a massive shipment of weapons to be moved into Harlem, intending to start a riot that would cover their tracks and allow them to escape in the chaos. But Thorne's invisible army of porters, janitors, and elevator operators had been watching every move with silent intensity. They intercepted the truck at the Willis Avenue Bridge. Thorne's men didn't just take the guns, they used the KKK's own explosives to destroy the shipment in a massive fireball that lit up the Harlem skyline for miles. It was a tactical masterpiece that left the enemy disarmed and desperate. The KKK was now isolated and hunted in a neighborhood that had become a cage. Thorne was no longer just defending his family. He was dismantling a machine of terror piece by piece, proving that fear is a two-way street. The police investigated the explosion but found no leads, as they were beginning to realize that the only way to survive was to stay out of the ghost's way. Share this video with a friend who loves true crime. The 7th day brought the final confrontation that the entire city had been dreading. Thorne tracked the leader, a high-ranking city official with deep ties to the KKK, to a secluded warehouse on the Harlem River. Thorne walked in alone, mirroring the legendary image of him standing firm against armed men with nothing but his presence. He didn't draw a gun immediately, he simply stood there, an embodiment of the neighborhood's righteous fury. The official, trembling behind a desk, pointed a revolver at Thorne's chest. "You can't kill me, I'm the law," he screamed, his voice cracking with terror. Thorne's voice was a low, chilling whisper that seemed to come from the shadows themselves. "The law died in the park 7 days ago. I'm just here to collect the debt." He forced the man to look at photographs of David, making him witness the human cost of his message. The standoff lasted only seconds before Thorne's superior speed ended the reign of the dragon. Justice wasn't delivered in a courtroom, it was delivered in the dark. Drop a comment below. Did Thorne go too far? We want to hear your thoughts. The KKK fled Harlem, their presence erased as if it had never existed in the first place. The official report on the week's violence was buried by the city, listed as a series of unrelated accidents and missing persons that were never found. Detective Walsh closed his file with a heavy heart, knowing the truth would never be in the papers or the history books. David Thorne's scholarship was renamed in his honor, a silent tribute to the boy who wanted to change the world through law. Elias Thorne returned to Marcus Garvey Park on the 8th morning as the sun began to rise. He stood beneath the oak tree, the morning wind no longer carrying the sound of a creaking rope. The debt was paid in full. He had taken their dignity, their power, and their lives, leaving only the legend of the ghost to guard the streets. Harlem belonged to its people again, and the police knew better than to ever let the rope creak in that park again. Thanks for watching. Make sure to subscribe, like, and comment below to help us tell more stories.